Hey everybody, this is Laurie Meyer from stampedgreetings.com, and today I want to show you a really fun technique that is stamping on baby wipes. And we're going to be making a stamp pad out of baby wipes. These are two projects that I've made using this technique, and in a future video I'll show you a little bit more about the one on the left. The one on the right is what I'm going to focus on today. And I'm actually going to do two videos for this card. The first video is the one that I will do today that will show you the technique for the baby wipe stamping. And then the second video is going to be how to make this fun fold. And let me show you. I'm going to slip off the belly band and then show you how this fold works. It's a gate fold to begin with. And then when you open it up, it has a really nice pop out area. I can actually make it stand up. It would look like that when it's standing up. And it is just full of amazing options. This is definitely a second video because there are several pieces of paper that we'll need to create the fun fold card itself. So today what I'd like to focus on is how to create the focal point, this background for the card. And if you have the stamp set, you're going to know which stamp set I used. It's called Soft Seedlings, and it is absolutely gorgeous. You can see from the stamped image here that the detail that's shown on the stamp really does come through. And there are some very fun additional stamps that come with it. The whirligig or the helicopter. I know there's a real technical term for it, but we'll call it a whirligig because I like to say that. And then there's some really nice sentiments in there as well. So I'm just going to jump in. This is one of those projects where it just makes sense to do it rather than to talk about it. And I'm going to move some of this off and get a piece of scrap paper in the background because I will be stamping on the scrap paper a little bit. This measures 3 3/4 by 5 inches. And honestly, the measurement is a little bit up to you. If you want to make the focal point so that the next time that I show you how to do this fun fold, you'll have your piece done, then please do get a piece of paper that's 3 3/4 wide, 5 inches tall. And you can have this any kind of neutral color that you would like. I'm using basic white for this particular background that I'm going to make. Just going to put this over to the left for a minute. And then some things that are not really stamping tools, but some things that you're going to need to do this baby wipe technique. I like to use paper plates, and I like to use paper plates that have a little bit of a coating on them. You can see with that shining that there's a little coating. It's not just paper. The reason is I'm going to put 2 baby wipes on top of this paper plate, and we're going to be adding some drops of ink from our ink refills. So I'm just putting 1 baby wipe, and I'm going to go ahead and put another one. You don't have to put 2. I just find that it, for me, it tends to work a little bit better. 1 would definitely do the trick. And I have some lovely baby wipes. And I'm saying that in all sincerity. They have a, you can't smell it, but a cucumber and green tea fragrance is very, very pleasant. What we're going to do is we're going to create an ink pad, a stamp pad on here. And that means that we're going to drop some ink, and then we're going to come back and use this as our ink pad. So I'm going to take some of my ink refills. I'm going to put, believe it or not, 5 colors. You don't need to put this many. I may have overdone it in terms of colors. And I'm just going to drop, literally, some ink onto my baby wipe. And you can see that this is fairly random. I'm trying to get a good area covered. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm considering the stamp, the primary stamp that I'm going to use. And I'll bring that out so you can see it and understand why I've made that area so big. This is the stamp that I'm going to be using mostly. And I just want to have enough inked area to use to get good coverage on that stamp. I'm going to come in with Cherry Cobbler next. I'm definitely using colors that are autumn-like and ones that you would see on leaves. And the Cherry Cobbler is one that I love for autumn. It is probably my absolute favorite red ink that Stampin' Up! Has ever made. I think it can be used very, very well for many, many different occasions. And it's a really rich color, absolutely beautiful, at least in my opinion. So I've added that. Isn't it kind of fun? You can start to see how the ink is already spreading on its own. Old Olive is another color that I'm going to be bringing in. This is nice. It gives a kind of a muted green, and it helps, I think, make the leaves look a little bit more realistic. If you go out and look at the leaves that have fallen in our yard to this point, there's still a hint of green in some of them. So I think having a little bit of green is a really nice thing to do. And you can tell that I'm not putting quite as much green as I did some of the other colors. Now the next color is a little risky, to be honest. It is Crumb Cake. And if you've played with colors, and I'm sure you have, you know that if you mix colors together that aren't super friendly with each other, you can get a little bit of a muddy mess. And this is kind of risky with me adding in a little bit of brown, because that muddy mess that you can get if you add colors that don't play nice together tends to be brown. So I'm using this very sparingly and just putting it in a couple of places and trying not to overdo. I don't want to add too much as you watch me put a couple more drops in there. Then the last color that I'm going to add to this ever-growing, I don't even know what we call it, a palette? It doesn't really look like a palette, but ever-growing number of colors. This is Daffodil Delight. And it is going to give us a really bright and cheery add to this overall color. And I'm going to kind of go in the middle-ish and add some of this Daffodil Delight just to give it a little sunshine. Now, what you're noticing as I'm doing this is I am intentionally not making sure that I have color everywhere. Couple of reasons. The ink is going to spread on its own. It's going to blend. I don't need to worry about that. You can see that that's happening already. And then the other thing is, as we start using this as an ink pad, as I start putting this stamp into the ink and pushing the stamp, by doing that, I'm forcing some of that ink to spread even more. So I do not need to make sure that every single part of the area that I started with is inked up. This is going to work just fine. So we have our ink pad. So let's kind of play around with this. I'm going to get the sheet of Whisper White out of my way, or Basic White, excuse me. And I'm just going to go in and I'm going to use this as an ink pad. And I'm going to just press it a little bit. This is doing two things. It's starting to blend those colors even more, and it is getting color on my stamp. So I'm going to get a little bit more color on here, and I'm going to test this before I put it onto the paper that I'm going to use as the focal point. And I'm just making sure that I've got really good coverage on all parts of that stamp. And then I'm going to use my scrap paper. And I'm just going to test the stamp. This is doing two things. It's helping me understand how this image is going to stamp, and it's getting some good ink on that stamp. And you can see that we're starting to get some ink on here. So I'm going to come back in. I'm kind of priming the stamp as well. And this is a good thing to do, especially if it's a new stamp to you, because you're going to get an idea of how the image stamps when you use your stamp. For this kind of technique where you have your ink on a baby wipe stamp ink pad, I do suggest that you use some nice detailed images. They're going to blend together really well. All right, so now I know how that stamp is going to behave. So I'm going to go ahead and start stamping one of my pieces. And I'm going to stand up for this. I've actually been sitting down to this point, and I'm going to just stand up. I'm inking up that stamp. I'm just going to take a look at it and make sure that I'm getting some really good ink coverage. And then I will bring that stamp over to my paper. I'm going to try to get the image about in the middle. It really doesn't matter because I will be putting a lot more of the same images around. And I'm giving this a nice push. I'm giving it a nice push because again, I'm kind of seasoning up that stamp and I want it to look really good in terms of an image. That is pretty. That is really pretty. If I bring it up toward the camera, you can see it a little bit better. And the area that's a little bit light right in here, that's intentional. You can see how the stamp is created. So that's exactly how it is supposed to be stamping on the paper. And look at that color. It's just gorgeous. So what I want to do is I'm going to kind of mimic the style that I did here. And what that means is randomly stamping. So I'm going to go back into my ink pad over here. I'm going to grab some more ink and I'm going to position my paper so that I can get another partial leaf on that piece. And it's a really good idea to have a piece of scrap underneath because you are going to get some of the ink on your scrap paper since you'll be doing kind of partial image stamping. And then if I turn it down the other way, I'm going to try and get a little bit more down here. And every time you do this, every time you use this kind of technique, if you do stamping around the edges, you're going to come up with a different design. Isn't that gorgeous? I love this. Autumn is my absolutely favorite season. I love everything about it. I love the cooler weather. I love the colors. I just love the almost intentional kind of slowing down. It seems like we're in between summer, which is super busy, and then the holidays, which can be busy. And autumn allows us to breathe. It's almost like nature telling us, take a breath, enjoy what is going on around you, and just prepare for being a little bit busier in the holiday season. And right now, all I'm doing is sort of filling in the blanks. I don't want to overfill in the blanks because I'm going to use one other stamp if there are blanks that remain when I'm done with this. And if you get these little halos, don't worry about it. That just means I got a little bit of ink right on the side of the stamp. Don't worry about that because I'm going to show you kind of a trick in the way that I'm going to finish off this card. And I'm just going to come back right in here. Let's see, that should work. And just put a little bit of that leaf right on the edge. Oh my goodness, look at that. That is absolutely gorgeous. It is just so colorful. The different colors work incredibly well. You can see how the colors that I chose are pulling together, and there's not a muddy mess yet. And I'll tell you why yet in just a second. But that's one panel that's almost done. And what I like to do, if you've seen some of my videos, and if you know me personally, you know that one of my favorite things to do is add a little grunge. I like grunge. I don't know why. And when I got done with the first piece that I did using this technique, I thought I need a little something, just a little something. So I pulled out my Quiet Meadow stamp set and I focused on this stamp. Love it. Random, and it's one that can add some really nice background without being over powerful. And again, I'm just going to stamp that. You can see how that's going to stamp. The ink color that I'm using on this is Crumb Cake. And I'm using Crumb Cake because when I do the Fun Fold card, part of that card has Crumb Cake involved. So I just wanted to marry the colors. And I'm just adding a little bit of extra here and there, trying not to overdo. And when I'm doing that, what's kind of fun is some of these little dots are hiding where the halo was, or detracting from where the halo was. And you don't see it, you don't care about it, and it will completely vanish to the point that you will not notice it, even if you had a little bit of a halo inking. So now if you look at that piece, it is, I think, even more stunning. It just has a little bit more to offer. And you can do more or less of that grunge if you choose. I'm going to do another one of these. I just want to show you how quick these are. And I'm going to also talk just a little bit about the change that you're going to see as you continue to use your ink pad. So what I'm going to be doing is, since I have this baby wipe ink pad all set, I have a stack. I have 8 of these pieces that I've pre-cut, and I'm just going to do an assembly line. This is a perfect technique to do that because everything is out. This baby wipe will stay wet for a while. It's not going to stay wet indefinitely. We all know that. The chemical will evaporate and the baby wipe will definitely dry. But you have some time. And I have found that it is absolutely no problem to get 8, 10, 12, maybe more of these fronts stamped from one of the baby wipe stamp set, or ink pads, excuse me, because you've got enough ink, it's going to stay wet enough, and you can just keep going. While I'm doing this, take a look at that ink. See how it's continuing to blend? What that is going to do is it's going to start changing the colors that we see when we're stamping. And the dominant colors will start to take over. In my case, that will probably be the cherry cobbler, maybe the pumpkin pie, and maybe the old olive. But I guarantee you that cherry cobbler is really going to start to be the dominant color that we're going to see. So it's kind of interesting as you continue to use the ink pad just to see the way that the colors begin to change. And it's just a natural progression. When you first do the first 2 or 3 of your backgrounds, you're going to have more distinct color differences. As you continue to use the baby wipe and those colors blend more and more, the color differences will become much more subtle. And I have some examples that I can show you in just a minute. Now, on some of the pieces that I did with this stamp set, I pulled in the Whirly Gig stamp, and I used that to also fill in some of the blanks. So you can definitely do that, and you can move that stamp in different directions so that you get different images and it doesn't look like you're using the exact same stamp over and over to add color to your piece. And it can just be really a nice change as well from that image that you have on the larger stamp. I'm just trying to get it kind of in between some of the other images. Might put one more, probably pressing my luck here, but we'll see. Kind of one more right there. So there's my second piece. I'm going to bring in the first one. This is the one that I did just a couple minutes ago. And the colors on these are pretty much the same. Don't see a lot of difference yet. I'm not going to put the grunge on the second one just yet because I want to take advantage of my baby wipe ink pad right now and continue to do a couple more. So I'm going to do one more. I know you guys are getting the idea. And then I'm going to show you some examples of ones that I did with another baby wipe. Now, some of my friends are trying to see if regenerating the ink after the baby wipe dries, if regenerating with just a spritz of water will work. And I will give you an update on that when I show you the second video and we make that fun fold using this as the front. All right. The colors are still pretty much the same. I'm seeing a little bit less green when I look at the two that I've done. Starting to get a little bit more red. And that only makes sense when you look at the ink pad because that red and orange is taking over and it's really blending. And as I do this, they're going to become more and more red and orange red, which that's okay. We have quite a few leaves in our yard that are that color as well. And I did get a little halo. Again, I am not worried about that because there are many, many ways that I can hide that. This is just, it's fun. I don't do an awful lot of stamping with acrylic blocks. I tend to use my Stamparatus mostly when I stamp. And I just find that using an acrylic block brings back the freedom and the joy of stamping. Not that the Stamparatus doesn't, but this is just a little bit more playful. All right. And I'm just going to add a couple of the whirligigs. And you guys get the idea. So I don't want to belabor this. And I'm going to try to cover up a little bit of that halo. We'll see how good I can get. Yeah, not too bad. And here's another one. And see if I can get that one. Not too bad. And then I'll try to cover up some of that white space there. All right, so that's our third piece. So you can see how quick this is. I'm going to bring back in the three pieces that we've done. Started with the one on the left and went to the one in the middle. And I don't know how well this is showing on camera. The greens are a little bit more prominent over here. You can see the greens definitely. The split between the red and the orange is more defined here, and it's starting to blend a little bit when we get down to the one on the right. So the colors are starting to change. These are ones that I did previously, and they're a little bit more apparent. This is toward the end. I think this was number, I'm going to say maybe 9 or 10, something like that. So if I bring that one in, you can see that the difference in the colors, not too dominant. There were several. This is where I started. This is a couple of pieces back. And then this was at the beginning. So it definitely transitions so that you get a much deeper color and a much richer color and less numbers of colors as you go along. But you will be able to get several pieces out of this technique. And what I am going to do is just let you know what you'll need to have if you would like to make the second project that I'll show you. So this is the fun fold card. You can see that one entire piece, one of these pieces, goes on the front. It is cut, we will cut it, but I've already completed the piece for the front. So if you would like to make this fun fold card with me, then just have one piece that you've done for the front. You're going to need an additional piece to do 3 panels on the inside. So I will take this one and I'm going to add some grunge to it so it will look exactly like this piece. And I'm going to use that to cut into these 3 pieces, and that piece will end up being also the sentiments that I'm going to cut. So the second piece, you'll have 2 pieces that are identical. The second piece is going to be used for these 3 panels and the 2 panels that are for your sentiments, the one on the belly band and the one in the middle. And then the other 2 pieces are ones that you can do while you have your stamp set out. And I will give you the dimension of those pieces of paper so that you have those and you can cut them out. They are 5 inches high. So each of these is 5 inches in height, just like the panels that we've been working on. And the measurement, the width, let me make sure I get this correct, is 1 5/8. So if you would like to get ready to make this second card, you're going to need 2 of these panels complete. They're 3 1/4 by 5. So 2 of those. Don't do anything with them. We will cut them together. And then you're going to need 2 more pieces of the same color cardstock. And they're going to be cut to 1 5/8 by 5. So 1 5/8 by 5. You need 2 of those. And you can go ahead and stamp whatever you want, or you can leave these blank. You can see that I chose to just put a little bit of a leaf on the top left on one of them and another leaf on the bottom right on another. And I did add some grunge. And then you will be all set other than the pieces of color cardstock. And I'll give all of those dimensions in my next video. And we will make this fun fold card together with a belly band and then opening up like this. But there are so many options. If you don't want to make a fun fold, if you are just in love with this technique and you want to make cards, these are gorgeous for the front of a card or for the inside of a card or both. There's so many ways that you can use these fronts, and I know you will find them. Another card that I will be posting is this one that I made, and I started with the exact same thing, exactly the same, 3 3/4 by 5. That is the front of this card, and I will also be posting directions on how to make this card. which I think is stunning as well. It's just a little bit different. So that's it. That is the baby wipe technique. I hope you have fun with it. I hope you find some amazing stamps to use to create this. In the notes that I put in this video, I will give you some information of how you can add this amazing stamp set to your collection. And I will also make sure that you have all the dimensions that you'll need to get ready to make the fun fold card that I showed will be in the second video. But that's it for now. So enjoy the baby wipe technique, and I would love to see what you make. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.